Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Planning Board for the City of Birmingham, Wednesday, February 12th, 2025. Could we please call the roll?
Scott Klein.
Present.
Robin Boyle.
Here.
Stuart Jeffries.
Here.
Bart Kozak. Daniel Sher.
Here.
Noah Boyce.
Here.
Brian Williams.
Present.
Ms. Lieberman.
All right, we are quorum with 6 members tonight. Let's move on to review and approval of the minutes. January 22nd, 2025. Any corrections?
Move the approval of the minutes of January 22nd, 2025 as presented.
Support.
Motion, Mr. Scher, support, Mr. Williams. Any conversation? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion unanimous. Well, welcome to the public on this first meeting of the month of February. We have a study session tonight which includes one public hearing. There will be an opportunity for the public, whether you're here in the building or whether you're watching home at Zoom, to participate. I will call for public comment at several times and give further instructions at that point, but you can participate both here in person and via Zoom. With that, I would like to recognize 2 new members, 2 student members for this year. We have both Carter and Olivia. Welcome. Hopefully you won't get too tired of our dad jokes, but maybe if you wouldn't mind even just coming up real quickly and introducing yourself briefly and saying hello, perhaps, why you'd like to be a part of the board.
There's
I'm Carter. I'm a junior at Gross High School. I joined the board because I thought it'd be interesting to see how everything's built in our city and know about stuff before it happens.
Great. Appreciate that. Olivia?
I'm Olivia. I'm a junior at Seahome, and I also, same thing, was really interested on how everything is planned here and how it runs, and just seeing more of the behind the scenes of everything. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, welcome. You are non-voting members, but you are able to participate in conversations. So if you have questions, raise your hand. If you'd like, we have 2 seats available today if you're interested in sitting up here.
Come on up if you want to get behind the curtain. It's not an iron curtain.
Peer pressure. You guys don't get enough of that, I'm sure.
Fantastic. Well, welcome. Mr. Dupuy, review of the agenda. Any changes from what's posted?
So Chair Klein, no changes to the agenda as posted. However, I would like, in the spirit of openness, just to mention that I did make some corrections to the impervious surface, open space, and lot coverage memo. Just 2 errors that I fixed.
Okay.
That agenda was re-uploaded, and it's described on our agenda page, the errors that I fixed.
Great.
Just in the spirit of openness.
And you'll
I'll
brush us up on those as we go through them.
Yes.
Right? Fantastic. I'll tell you that in a minute. All right, so let's move forward. We have our first study session item, which actually is a public hearing on a new generator ordinance. So I will officially open the public hearing. Mr. Dupuy.
All right, so since we've seen this several times, a brief synopsis of how we got here and then a description of the language, and I'll let you add it. This was brought on by the fire and building departments after quite a surge in generator installations, plus a couple of safety issues with generators close to homes, carbon monoxide collecting, just posing a serious safety risk to our residents. So we decided to develop this ordinance to try and regulate the location and the disposition of these generators. We came up with this over a series of months. It's been vetted by all of our departments, the planning board a couple of times, and our council. So this language we're presenting here is what we feel is the best language we've got up to this point. And just for the record, since you've seen it last, there's only been 2 extremely nominal grammar word changes that the council recommended. We had missed a word here and there. So other than that, it's completely the same. So with that, I do have Fire Marshal Jeff Scaife in the room in case you do have any questions. And of course, I'm available for questions should you have them.
Mr. Dupuy, just for the spirit of open for the public who may have seen this, can you just kind of quickly run through what the added section states? You don't even have to read it, just kind of tell us what the highlights are.
So the highlights are, again, as I mentioned, placement. We are requiring now, as opposed to a side yard, for example, which caused a lot of problems, we're requiring them to be in the rear yard, at least 5 feet away from the principal structure. We're requiring the exhaust outlets to be pointed at a certain direction toward the rear open space. There are some requirements for the use of the generators. Of course, emergencies are exempt for the most part, but maintenance and exercising. We also built in a nonconformity section. That's fairly typical with the exception of B, where the fire department has some discretion in an event that carbon monoxide builds up. They may be required to conform. So it reads very similar to any other accessory structure standard in terms of placement and detail. That's the gist.
Fantastic. Any words of addition from the fire department, sir? Welcome. Please introduce yourself briefly. And
Jeff Scaife, Fire Marshal.
thank you, sir.
As a matter of point, I just wanted to add in here, the memo, up until July, the end of July, we saw 39 permits. From August 1st to today's date, we've seen an additional 74. Wow. So it's becoming increasingly popular. What I would like to add to that, though, is approximately 95% of these generator permits of the 74 were in the rear yard.
Good.
Initially, without even us having to say anything. They came to us with the plans, and they are already starting to put these things in the rear yards.
So the new ordinance will help give you some teeth to make sure that's where they go.
Absolutely, and, and again, we're not looking to, start walking between yards and finding, any faults. What we're really looking for is just some discretion at the end of the day. We've had, like I've mentioned before, these generators producing large amounts of CO in these homes, and we don't want to have that bad day.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff? And again, just questions, or of the fire marshal? Thank you, sir. I will open it to the public then. If there is anybody from the public who would care to comment on the proposed ordinance language, if you are here, please stand up and come forward. If you are at home on Zoom, use the raise your hand function in the center console. I do not see any hands going up. I don't see anybody here going up. One last call for public participation. All right, with that, I will bring it back to the board and I will close the public hearing. Board conversation, any discussion, concerns?
I want to say something. I think everybody probably remembers that I had some concerns about not the rear yard so much, but as the 5-foot distance away from the buildings when we spoke about this in the past. And while I still am not wild about that, I plan to support this tonight. A very wise man reminded me that when the fire department asks for something, we should give it to them, especially when it has to do with safety. But one thing I did want to point out, and it came to my attention in the long-range planning meeting, is that the Sustainability Board is going to be asking us soon, or maybe not asking us, I'm not sure how it'll work, but about having detention basins in all the new construction yards. And a big part of what I discussed originally was 40-foot wide lots and generators and now maybe detention basins. And we're taking up whatever little bit of yard is left for people who don't live on big lots. So my ask is that the departments make sure they're communicating with each other and they know what each other is proposing and hoping to have happen so that, we just keep the smooth process along the way.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Jeffries?
Nick, how does this work on a corner lot?
It may sound like a cop-out, but the same. Every property has a front, side, and rear open space. So on a corner lot, there's still that rectangle of rear open space that every other lot has. So it wouldn't necessarily be shifted in any side yards just because it's a corner.
Okay, but on a corner, if I put it, I'm on a corner. If I put it 5 feet behind my house, it could be right out there in wide open view.
This
just
one's not.
right there,
This isn't a site plan, so we're going to have to make findings.
15 feet off the sidewalk. I don't know.
It could.
I know you can't write them for everything. It just popped in my head the other day. The other thing I was curious about, and I just looked it up, but apparently you can put these it's not a hard rule, but they said you don't want to go much more than 60 or 70 feet away from your transfer switch, which I guess on most of our lots, it's hard to get too far away from anything, so.
All right, I guess I'll just close, and I'll thank the fire department and the building department for bringing this forward. This is how government's supposed to work, in my opinion. We see a problem, we work together to try and fix it and protect lives. So I appreciate that. Mr. Williams,
Can I make a motion?
I would love you to.
Okay, I move that the planning board recommend approval to the city commission the amendments to Article 4, accessory structure standards, section 4.03, to add provisions for standby generators.
Motion, Mr. Williams. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Scher. Any conversation at a board level on the motion?
I have one
Mr. Scher?
observation, and thank you, Mr. Williams, for bringing it to my attention. The board will notice that this motion does not have a finding in it, as we have had with our site plans and SLUPs. And it's not necessary here because this is a legislative recommendation as opposed to a final decision. So I'm pretty sure that's the reason that we don't see that language.
Thank you, Mr. Scher. With that, I'll go to the public on the motion. Is there anyone in the public that would care to comment on the motion itself to recommend approval of the changes to Article 4? I see no one standing up. If there is anyone home on Zoom using the raise your hand function, I see no hands going up. We'll bring it back to the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion unanimous. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Jeff.
Beat the big snow.
All right, let's move forward. We have a study session. Study sessions are such, for the public watching, that no real decisions will be made, or at least no votes will be taken unless, of course, we decided to move this forward to another public hearing, which I don't know that tonight's meeting qualifies, but let's move forward to impervious surface, open space, and lot coverage.
Okay, so the summary from me and the planning department is, we last talked about this December 11th at our study session right before the new year. And I would describe it, we ended up at a bit of an impasse in terms of definitions, and frankly, just the word gravel, which stems from our current definition of impervious surface, which includes the word stone, which was the sort of the impetus for all this. And the impasse was that, speaking for city staff generally, myself, the engineering department, the building department, still felt that gravel belonged in the impervious surface definition. In discussions here, we ended up deciding that maybe instead of addressing it only in the impervious surface definition, that we take a step back and look a little bit more broadly at everything that relates to impervious surface, including open space and lot coverage. So what I wanted to do here is take that big step back, review all the open space, lot coverage, impervious surface standards, and try to make sure that not only I understand what it all means, but that everyone here understands what it all means and how they work together. So I did provide a couple of definitions in the actual memo. There are, of course, a few more threads that stem from this, and just briefly, for open space, there's definitions for front, percent, rear, and side. I didn't include, I included percent, but not front, rear, and side. So in addition, I thought it would be helpful to kind of create a graphic for everybody, which, point one, there was an error in this, a very small one, but an error nonetheless that I've corrected. I didn't realize that a projection off of the rear of a home for a deck or porch or patio was also an exclusion. One of the exclusions in 4.30 open space standards. So I adjusted this to be an exclusion. So this is an extremely high-level block diagram of what a lot looks like and what counts towards what. Again, it was important for me just to understand, but also hopefully for you all, just to get a visual representation of what we mean by the three different terms. There's also something that didn't get brought up last time, which is important in that there's a little bit of a extrapolation in section 4.31 with paved surface limitations in the front yard that we didn't bring up the last time around. those paved surfaces are limited to 35%, and that's the other correction. I had 65% there, which is backwards. The open space required in the front yard is 65%, meaning paved surfaces are limited to 35. So that's something else to add into the fold. So generally, what I wanted to do in sort of prepping for tonight, the memo is clearly just a sort of a reset. I tried to find a little bit more definitions to bring to the consideration here, to the table for consideration. I found some new ones for impervious surface, some open space. Some communities don't have definitions for open space, and they do it differently. I think that was Fernhill that uses yard, for example. And in preparing, I decided I may take a different tact with you all today and at least discuss this tact, because of how interrelated all of these concepts are and all the threads that have been woven, not only in the black and white text, but also in BZA interpretations over the years, practice over the years, as far as like 25 years since at least Bruce has been here. There are a lot of threads that we have to be careful to unwind if they relate. I was thinking that because it could take such a long time to unwind and get exactly right, that I'd at least ask the question to you all, is this sort of direct look into open space and impervious surface worth it now, or when we update the full zoning ordinance, which I'm very confident that we'll get next year, is it worth waiting just another 12 months to really unwind all those threads, start fresh with our new goals regarding sustainability and open space, and go from there? That's where I wanted to start. If not, fine, we can keep going, and we can make sure that we could put a Band-Aid on it, we could solve it. I'm just interested in hearing what you have to say about that, because that comprehensive rewrite will be a comprehensive rewrite, kind of a blank slate. So I guess with that, I'll kick it back to y'all. Of course, I'm here for questions, but admittedly, the agenda is light in terms of material. So.
Thank you, Mr. Dupuy. I know I have multiple comments on this, as you can imagine, but I'll kick it to the board if they have thoughts. We'll start with Mr. Boyle.
Okay. Seeing we're taking this step back to look at it, we should start by asking, what is the policy issue that we're trying to address? What are we actually asking ourselves that we can do in our zoning ordinance? It seems to me it comes down to really three elements, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. One, we're looking at the proportion of a residential or even a bigger lot, the proportion of that lot that has a pervious surface to allow water to drain through into the subsurface. It's not really about impervious substances, it's about pervious substances, correct? Okay. So that's one policy issue. We want to make sure that that is built in to the way in which our homes are built, maintained, modified, and the like. Second point, I think, is that we want to ensure that whatever we end up agreeing allows the owner of the property the ability to use the property in a way that they wish to in their building. In other words, finding out how much land is there for grass or other surfaces and what's there for as a hard surface. So it comes down to the use of the property by the owner, but it also comes down to the aesthetics of the property, because it's their backyard, their side yard, and their front yard that we're talking about. I think we need to keep that in our own mind as we go forward. So if you put up the picture again, the drawing, I mean, one question I had when I stared at that for a while is that that's a very helpful thing to look at. Are we also wanting to consider, and this is maybe pushing the policy a bit further, a use of that property, that doesn't fall into these three specific categories there? Could we add a fourth category that would not be grass, and it would not be asphalt or concrete, but it could be crushed stone, in such a way that we accommodate the goal, which is to get the water to go through, but at the same time allow the owners to use their land as they see fit?
Thank you. Mr. Jeffries.
I was going to, that was good, by the way. I was going to ask, just give me an example on, when you say these threads, just, can you point out one so I better understand?
Sure. So not only the threads between, the relationship between open space lot coverage and impervious surface, which basically what this picture is about, but the threads to the permitted projections into open space, the threads into the development standards in the R1A through R3 zones. Those are the black and white threads that I kind of referenced. The other threads is there's black and white text and then there's practice, i.e. the application of those codes by our building department over the last 25 years, which, you know, some of these are pretty interpretable, if you will, and they've been interpreted a certain way. And when it comes to interpretation, one person can think one way and one person can think the other way, and both could be reasonable.
So it could be, some are policy, some are dimensional.
Yeah.
Any other input?
Well, I guess, Nick, I think when you say next year, I mean, it gets, you were saying we would have something before us in January, February of 2026 or 2027?
So what I suppose I mean by that is our budget would be approved July 1. In this perfect world, we'd have the money to do a zoning ordinance update. Also, in this perfect world, we would have prepared for that July 1, have an RFP ready to post on July 1. It would theoretically get started, and then we'd have that, 6 months left in 2025 to get where we could, and then beyond, however long it takes.
So I guess one thing, and maybe you know this and maybe you don't, but it would be nice to know, how often are property owners coming along and saying, oh, I'd like to put gravel or stone, in the open space, and the building department is saying, oh, you can't do that because of the ordinance?
So I'm going to just say this is my recollection of what I've been told by the building department. I can confirm, but I would say a lot. But it's being approached and working through it kind of things. I think that there's extreme examples, like one that's happening right now, where someone did cover their whole yard in gravel, or stone, whatever you want to call it. So I'd venture to say all the time.
And just the last follow-up on that, has the building department expressed any discomfort with the ordinance as it exists today and their ability to interpret it consistently throughout the city, in given historical practices?
I would say the difficulty would be in, maybe not in defending, because I think there's, as a part of the practice argument, is consistency is key. I think they've been very consistent in, for example, the stone argument. I think if you asked an average person what stone is, they may think, big boulder type stone. So when they get here and hear that, gravel or crushed stone is all wrapped into that definition, they might be a little shocked, but after some discussion, it ends up not being a problem necessarily.
Okay, all right.
Ms. Boyce?
I had a couple of questions, but I feel like, so we were asked originally, right, to take a look at gravel and stone, and if it was impervious or if it is not impervious. I think we largely concluded that it is pervious, gravel and stone, but, and that's brought us onto this bigger discussion. And to answer your question to us, should we wait a year and deal with this later? Or I feel like we should work it out now. And I feel like we should get through and express what we think the right solution is. And I mean, it seems like it's going to take us a little bit of time to get there because it's opened a few, you think not, but, I mean, it has opened a few other cans of worms, and so I feel like we need to get it done. I don't think we should kick the can to a year or 18 months from now or whatever it may be. So that's my answer to your question.
Mr. Williams, did you have a comment?
Well, I was looking at some of the other municipalities, and I think part of my problem with proceeding immediately is frankly a question of aesthetics, and it may involve stone, but I was looking at the Ferndale ordinance, which basically said permeable pavers or other semi-hardscape materials are not considered a landscape green space, and they want green space, not rocks. So I don't know that we have reached a conclusion, which I view as more aesthetics, frankly, and I'm a little hesitant to proceed immediately without some additional thought on what I view as an aesthetic issue. And some people may be concerned with stones, but when you look at a community like Ferndale, which basically says we want open space to be green space, it raises an issue. My guess is that people in Birmingham would side on the side of Ferndale and not on the side of Stones. And I'm not saying that one is right and one is wrong, but we haven't studied that issue.
I just have one more thing.
Real quick, yeah, please.
Yeah, sorry, thanks. I think they're two different things, and I think you're absolutely right, Brian, because we want to, there's another piece of this we need to address, and it is there a percentage of vegetation, plants or grass or whatever it may be, and is there an area of the property that we might prefer to see vegetation, like in the front yards or as compared to stone? But I'm of the opinion that gravel and stone is pervious. So that was part of the beginning of this whole discussion is it or is it not? And some people say it is and some people say it's not. Well, my research has concluded for me that it is. So that's one question answered in my mind, but the second piece is what Brian brought up. How much vegetation do we hope to have and where would we like it?
Right. So let me jump in real quickly because I know I'm somewhat passionate about this as a civil engineer. I agree generally with everything that's said. I think these have been good comments, and I appreciate the input. Ms. Boyce, you hit the nail on the head, and Mr. Boyle, to kind of take it back to where you started with it, I want to go back even further than you did. Because what we were asked to do is we were asked to look at a bad definition of impervious surface that went against SEMCOG low-impact design and good engineering design of stormwater management. So our current policy is anti-sustainability.
Right.
Let's just come out and say it. I know it's the current policy, and we have to enforce that. And so I take no umbrage with that. But, however, we are here to correct that issue. Now, I don't want to pull the threads. Our current open space, our current percentages in this ordinance have been around for 30 years. I haven't heard any complaints. They seem to be working, at least for now. If we want to, as part of a comprehensive zoning overhaul, look at those, hey, I'm all in. That's part of what we do. But I think what's happening here is that we are following, and I say this to us as this group that has been together, our classic dive into the rabbit hole to pull at every strand possible to turn a quick study into 19 months worth of overhaul. In my opinion, again, we are focused on trying to make sure that our ordinance lives up to low-impact design and good design standards for stormwater management, which it currently doesn't. We already have an ordinance that outlines open space, that outlines lot coverage, and does it cleanly and well. I love your graphic, Mr. Dupuy. It was very, 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 very helpful. Right underneath your graphic, you talk about sections 4.30 and 4.31, and you say that paved surface limitations outlined in 4.31 capped paved surfaces in front open spaces at 35%. Now, we don't have a definition for paved surface, and I don't think that's a good name to begin with. But we already cap what you can do in the front yard at 35%, which includes gravel, brick, or other materials, right? Why don't we just simply look at 4.31 and make a determination as to whether or not, for the purposes of this ordinance, like Ferndale, it does not include stone or other materials in the front yard. Perhaps in the front yard, we want 35% to be actual vegetation or landscape beds. We have to discuss what that means for the rear yard. I don't have an answer, but I think we're making this more complex than it needs to. We want to try and encourage people to use low-impact design when they can, and instead of putting a concrete patio, put something like they did over at the Big Rock, where they've got the crushed stone outside by a fire pit, right? That's better for the community, better for stormwater management than having that same area of concrete, right? So why can't we just attack it in the same way as 4.31 and very quickly come to a determination as to how and where, to your points, and your point, Mr. Williams, is the front yard, from an aesthetic purposes, do we want to see any of it? Or does it not count toward that 35%? In the rear yard, do we care? I think pretty quickly we can come to a decision and then come back to the bigger issues if and when we decide to revamp the entire ordinance.
I agree.
Mr. Williams?
In your view, is the 65% the correct percentage?
Well, that's a tough
I don't know.
question. I don't know. I think that maybe with a very quick review of some other ordinance, we might be able to come to an opinion on that. Quite frankly, right now, it's what we have.
Yeah, I know
and what
that.
we have had.
Yeah.
So if you're telling me, do I think it's the right, well, it's worked.
I think if we show it graphically like similar to this, it'll make more sense.
To me, the question is in the front yard, whether or not loosely graded stone, which is what we're talking about, should be included in that 35% or not, is really the question.
Yeah.
And if so, is there a limit? We obviously don't want all of it to be,
So the consequence of saying it can be included within 35% is that the front yard in some circumstances is either going to be paved or stone and no grass.
well, 35% of the front yard would be. And
Well-
I'm not implying that that's correct.
But the paved surface can constitute 65%, so you've
No,
got.
cap paved surfaces at 35%.
You
the
printed it
front
before
yard.
he changed the.
Yeah,
that was an
also
error.
the
I'm sorry.
Mistakes
Yeah.
that I.
You're right, you had the wrong, pardon me. So 35% of that front triangle can be driveway,
Okay,
or right now can be stone. That's allowed now.
but it winds up being the same, right? So,
Frankly, maybe we don't even need to change it. Because you could already put up to 35% of your front open space be either pavement or stone. We're now just saying it's not impervious, but you still are limited in the front yard
Yeah,
to what you're allowed to do right now.
Might not even have to mess with that at all.
yeah,
Maybe we talk about the rear yard or whether there's an issue there.
the question is, I think the front yard is always of more concern, except on a corner lot. And then the side yard, it becomes important.
So I think that this has been good, and I understand the direction to go this route. I think it's an interesting direction to go, and it could very well
I
end
wanna
up being really easy.
Keep it simple, I think, is the key.
Yeah, it's fine.
And I think, if that ends up being the middle ground here, I think we might just take it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't go without saying that I suppose I would respectfully disagree a little bit with a couple of things. Our ordinance certainly is not sustainable glory here. It's not perfect, but it's not anti-sustainability. I think that there's some holes in it, no pun intended, but I think we'll give it a little credit.
Fair.
Also, I suppose it's awkward to say, because the Low Impact Development Manual is a good document, but it was written in 2008, 17 years ago, 2008. We have
When was our
updated
ordinance
standards. Oh, yeah, like probably 2006.
19,
Early 2000s, I think 2006 was signed, but.
just saying.
So 2008, and what we've been working off of, frankly, a lot, are the brand-new Oakland County stormwater standards. which does include gravel. And there are 5 definitions in the materials that I've given you that include gravel in impervious surface definitions. So I didn't think it was, we don't think it's as outlandish necessarily, but I cannot disagree that stone, crushed stone, gravel is pervious. I think other people did a more clever or nuanced job explaining that it's not necessarily impervious, it just slows down or what have you, the infiltration of water.
So it's clay.
So they may have done a better job at that, certainly than our existing definition. But I think if it's all right with you, I'll go the route, explore the front open space, just check it again, it might be good.
Explore the sides and the rear if you feel that.
Explore the sides and the rear, maybe be a little more deliberate about what we say here in terms of Brian Williams' comment about landscaped green open space, and see where that takes us. Maybe that lands, we don't need to change too much, and we can ride off into the sunset.
Mr. Williams?
Yeah, I would opt that we address the issue now. I mean, it's not to rule out that we can't, as part of a comprehensive, take another look at it a year or a year and a half from now.
When you say it,
But-
you mean we address the front, side, and rear yard
Yes.
aesthetics now?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, and we can always look at it again in the context of a comprehensive review.
Yeah.
But I think, short-term, we can address some of these issues now.
Cool. Other thoughts?
I think the more difficult question is rear yards, in my view. And that's going to require some work by the department.
Any other comments, questions?
I think that makes a lot of sense.
We all on board?
Yep,
Work we're willing to do, Mr. Williams, it's not a problem.
There you go.
I know that.
But again, Mr. Dupuy, try and keep it simple, because I think the fewer tugs.
Yeah.
we need
I'll give you a sign I got in the Army, KISS.
Yeah.
Keep it simple, stupid.
All right, at this point, is there anyone from the public that cares to comment on this topic of impervious surface? I see no one standing up. Is there anyone on Zoom who would care to comment? You can use the raise your hand function. Seeing no
All right,
hands go up.
Good.
We'll bring it back to the board. All right, good work.
Cool.
good.
Moving forward, miscellaneous business communications, pre-app. I don't know if anybody has any questions. I don't see it. I don't think we had one.
No.
Project updates, master plan update, long-range planning, anything that you wanted to discuss with us, Mr. Dupuy, or just looking for input if we have questions that we have?
Nope, the Royal Oak Master Plan stuff I had already sent to you via
Yes.
email. I just thought it'd be appropriate to include in the packet. Hopefully you've all got a chance to thumb through it.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Looks
It's
awfully
nothing else.
familiar.
It's almost like they use the same consultant or something.
It is.
but, and the long-range planning memo is just in the spirit of sharing. It's what we presented this year. We haven't really given that to you in the past, and I thought, why not?
Okay. Wonderful. We saw your long-range planning notes, found those very interesting,
Yep.
so thank you for that. Correspondence on administrative approvals. I don't know if anybody has any
No.
comments or questions.
I have an unrelated question. Did the commission appoint an alternate at the last meeting?
To my knowledge, the commission did not appoint an alternate. I think they took no action. The alternate position is only going to be active, or this term, through the end of March anyway. And I think they took the tack that they would rather appoint somebody for a full term than have to do it again in 4 weeks. So
Exactly right.
They had one person who has applied, so certainly the time is still open. If anybody else is interested or knows of somebody in the profession or in the industry that would be a good fit, they should get on there and apply. But I believe the last week of March. Does that sound right, Mr. Dupuy?
Yeah, mid to late, yeah.
26th or 20, whatever it is, that Monday would be when they would actually look to appoint somebody.
I think the form goes in.
24th.
I think the form goes in slightly earlier, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, the form should be, in fact, it's available now, because I think
24th would be the...
Mr. Boyle, our forms are available now for us, so.
I have a question.
Yes, thank you.
You're at the same meeting, right?
Mr. Boyle? Or Ms. Boyce.
Did you know?
I didn't know that.
Could have called you Bert. So.
Okay, all right, so I did the YMCA Senior Center workshop online, which from my home while it went down here at 5:30 on Monday night, which was really cool. Just to put it out there, I wish that more people knew about it. I feel like, I think we only had 50 people participating, and I feel like a lot of people would have been into doing that. It was really interesting. My question is, it was asked, I think, at City Commission, but I don't remember hearing an answer exactly. Is there going to be an opportunity for the planning board to not necessarily do that exact same workshop thing, but to be able to see, what they came up with from the workshop maybe, and talk about what the design may or may not be? Are we going to have a stab at this? I mean, the commissioners were great too, but I feel like a lot of us might be helpful.
I assume that the application for site plan, review / approval will include, a design feature. Now, how much,
Yeah.
what the architects are planning on doing, and whether or not they're planning on having another session where folks have a chance to comment on, they had, for those who don't know, they had 48 different views of different parts of buildings, and they asked everybody, do you like this a lot, a little, do you hate it, do you not care? And they kind of tallied it all up, and there were some, I guess you'd say, some consensus on some of the aspects of it. So whether they're planning on doing that exact same thing again, but I know they have at least one more public engagement session scheduled.
Something like that.
Yes,
So,
and to build on that, if I may,
please.
along with Dan is saying, there are specific stops that the planning board literally written into their contract.
Oh, good.
But beyond that, I recall talking with you all several months ago, and you had thought like a pre-application would be appropriate before they get to schematics.
Yeah.
And I had pitched that to Jana, and she thought it was a great idea.
Okay.
So I think that pre-application level discussion could be that, the avenue where we do that. And it
Okay.
is certainly on the table.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Good point. I would suggest the planning board members consider also, though, there's a very interesting dynamic with public projects like this. We are going to be the reviewing body for the site plan. So having us involved deeply in design charrettes as a body, I don't know whether that's crossing the line into owner representation as opposed to defending the ordinance. I don't know. I'm not suggesting there's an issue to be discussed, but just for your consideration as you think about your involvement, it might want to perhaps be personal as opposed to a full board setting on design matters until we get to a point that we're actually reviewing pre-application, site plan, and other matters. Just a thought. Not too hard set on that, but just
Yeah, and I can
something that
ask
popped in my
around
head
about that
today.
to Opinions Council and Jan. Could see what they think.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I'm not concerned in the least, but. Moving forward, the agenda for the 26th, I know Mr. Williams pointed out an interesting point that I thought we had set a date certain for the site plan review for Balfour on the generator. It's not on there. I don't know if it should be on there, and even if they don't submit it, we would just not hear them or what, but I do remember setting that, didn't we?
that is correct. It should be on there.
Okay.
It was a mistake.
Cool.
We've had meetings, and I think they went well, so I'm optimistic about what we'll see next time around. But
When is the site plan, one of the materials due in your office?
typically the week before
Okay. Okay,
for postponements like this.
so we'll add that to the 26th agenda.
That's correct. And if I may, while we're on here, I do have these study session items as kind of a sort of a placeholder. We typically don't do study session items, but if you wanted to work on them, maybe not every single one, but one or two, is everybody willing to do that, or would we rather just hit the site plan and go?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I wouldn't do more than two. So, in my ranking, I think number 3, impervious surface, you won't be ready in 2 weeks anyway. So, I really think we need to get back to the Triangle District. So I would, and my guess is that could take a fair amount of time. So maybe we just limit it to that, and you come,
Bring impervious back on the first meeting in March.
yes. And I don't know about the child care ordinance, but I think we've
one or
spent
two.
a lot of time on the triangle. And I think we haven't reached resolution yet. We ought to get back to it.
Fair.
What even is the child care ordinance?
We saw it once, I don't know if you
Oh,
remember or
was
not.
I absent?
I'm not sure.
You may have.
Yeah.
It's changed a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think items 2 and 3 on your proposed schedule could come at the March study session. But item 1, Triangle District bonus height requirements, let's get back at it. And 26th of February is fine.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Hopefully, if the site plan approval, or they follow the chairman's instructions, it won't be that lengthy,
Agreed.
even though the chairman probably won't be here.
All right, let's move forward to the action list, 2024, 2025. Did you want any specific input here tonight, Mr. Dupuy? I know you're trying to wrap up memos for city commission.
Yes, I am. So the input I'm looking for is, does this work for you? As a reminder, not only to you, but anybody, the 0 people that are listening in, this is an aspirational list. We're not married to it. Things can change. It's just we're starting in the year with this action list and working on it as we're able. So this would go in an annual report to the city commission. It technically gets approved, and then we're on our way. So this is what I've had relatively unchanged in the agenda for several months now. And it's based on what we've already got, the prioritization in the master plan matrices and what we're currently working on.
Any reason to add the Triangle District to this, since it's,
Yeah, I should have renamed this, frankly.
okay,
Yeah, that's
perfect.
It shouldn't just be mixed use, it should be Triangle District. So I would do that.
Okay. Mr. Blood?
I've already spoken with Nick. I was wondering if you would accept a very, very small change to the wording of one of the items. Caught my attention. Under general goals number 1, 2, 3, 4, where the words we use are begin to bridge the Woodward divide. I think many of us might take umbrage at the use of the word bridge.
Thank you.
I know exactly what we know exactly what we mean, but other people will use
Good
see the
catch.
word literally as a bridge.
So you want to put tunnel in there?
Probably.
Begin to reconnect the two sides of the Woodward
Something.
Avenue, or some phrase like that.
I think that's fair.
Take
That's
the
going
word.
to get taken away
Take
too
the
literally.
word out.
Good catch.
Catch.
Good catch.
Great. Both of those changes, consider it done. And on maybe, I don't necessarily need a motion. Just conversation was good enough.
Okay.
Excellent. Any other comments?
One other final comment, just to for the board to note the passing of one of the most interesting planning academics of really the past 30 years, Donald Shoup, who made parking a really sexy issue. He was an engineer by training. He ended up as a political scientist. He was 4 years at Michigan before he got his job at UCLA and stayed there for the rest of his career, and really did make people think. He wrote a book, The High Cost of Free Parking, which changed a lot of people's thinking.
Absolutely.
Passed away last week.
Interesting. Make a joke about an expired meter, but I will reserve that. Any other business before the board?
No.
Well, to our students, welcome. They're not always as quick as this, but they're always just as exciting.
He misspoke. They're never as quick as this.
With that, thanks to staff. Leah, welcome back officially. Good to see you again. And with that, we will say meeting adjourned.